Friday's shir. This is an advantage, which is extra, that is great and wondrous in an infinite way. In the mitzvah of knowing and reaching an understanding of the Eibishter's Teda, I'll call on mitzvahs maisias of all the mitzvahs that are behavioral. Even the mitzvahs that are connected to speech. Even the aspect of Teda that is a mitzvah. Right? When you learn Teda, there's the iyun, there's the examination of Teda, and there's the chayim heim leitiyim bepez, saying it bedibur, which is actually halachically the mitzvah to say it bedibur. We are speaking now about the mile of iyun Teda over dibur and Teda. Because when you do a mitzvah, it's a lavush, it's a garment. When you study Teda, it has the mile of being muzzin. It becomes one with you, and you become one with it. Okay? So the Alter Rebbe says that even though we're talking about the idea of holding God, which is available to Teda and mitzvahs, any mitzvah holds God, Teda has a mile. Why? When you do any mitzvah, either a verbal mitzvah or behavioral mitzvah, Hashem is a garment for your soul and is surrounding your soul with Eira Deshem, with light of the Eibishter, Meresha Vadraga from head to foot. Because the nature of mitzvahs is katzina, they're like a shield which surrounds you. Says that there will be a diyas ha-Teda, and in the mitzvah of knowing Teda, milvad, in addition, shaseichul melubash b'chochmas adishem, that your brain is surrounded by the wisdom of Hashem, and the wisdom of Hashem is a garment to your brain. Hinegam chochmas adishem bekirbe. The chochma of the Eibishter enters you internally, and it's something that you digest and metabolize. Masha seichel, that your mind is masig v'teves u'makif, reaches, grasps, and encompasses besichli inside the brain. Masha efshel litvis ulahasig, whatever you're able to grasp and intellectually reach. Miyadiyas hateda, for the knowledge of the Teda, each individual k'fi sichli, according to his mind, uk'fi yidiyase, according to his prior knowledge, vasagase, in his intellectual reach, bepardes, in the four levels of pshat and emes drush and in the Teda. And therefore, and since Shabiyadiyas hateda, one studies Teda, there is what's called the Makav and Mukav element. It's a mitzvah like any mitzvah that surrounds you, but it's also mazeh which you encompass and surround, and it becomes one with you. The Teda is revealed in the soul of the person and in his mind. Not only is the Teda holding you, but you're holding the Teda. Therefore, Teda is not only called a garment, it's also called bread and sustenance for the soul. Means just like physical food, bread. Zon as a guf sustains a person's body. He brings it internally into his intestines, mamish. And not only does it go inside of you as opposed to being surrounded by you, but you break it down. Right? Some people have if you've studied biology at all, you know that the issue in nourishment, it's true even of food, but it's especially true of medicines and vitamins and minerals, is absorption. It's not how many pills you take. It's how much your body breaks it down. Many of these pills, they have multivitamins with all the requirements of 21 natural substances, minerals and vitamins. You put it into your body, it comes right out. It says do it absorption. Yeah, you know what the difference between a kosher animal and a non-kosher animal is? Kosher animals are called, they're called ruminants, right? They're multi-gut fermenters. They have 4 stomachs. Yeah. So for every pound of grass that a kosher animal eats, a treifa animal has to eat 2 pounds of grass. A zebra, a horse. Because they rear gut dimension, they have only 1 stomach. So the amount of grass, the percentage of the grass that they eat that actually gets developed and processed is much, 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 much smaller. And this is one of the explanations for why it's brought in Rishayim. Why we eat only kosher animals, it's just so many more of them. The fact of the matter is, you'll look around the world, you'll see that kosher species, ruminants, are far more populous than the non-kosher animals, than the non-ruminants, right? And biologists call them primitive ungulates during modern. They say that the kosher species evolved later. Baruch Hashem, we don't believe in evolution, we believe in the Eibishter. But the reason there's so many more kosher than non-kosher animals is because they literally need less food. They eat less grass per day, per pound. And they also can survive on worse food. In bad years, they can eat almost inedible food and get nourishment because their stomachs are so efficient. Because it's about metabolism. It's about breaking things down. If you have a very, very good intestines, you can eat hair. Hair is protein. Hair of an animal. Or bones of an animal. and be nourished. But you have to have the guts of a hyena to do that. Not most of the time. A person who studies Teda, the better you metabolize the Teda, the more nasa down the more nourishment you get from the same piece of Teda. But it's not only the pshat that you surround it and it surrounds you. When you're surrounding it, you're metabolizing it. It's becoming you. And it's transformed to be blood and flesh like your flesh. It gives you life and it gives you existence. It's true in the knowledge of Teda and the intellectual reach as it affects human beings. You study it well with the focus, with the concentration of your intelligence. Top of page Yud. Your brain grasps it. It becomes one with him. And it becomes unified. It becomes nourishment to the soul. And life inside the person. From the one who gives life to all living things, which is the Eibishter, who's Ein Sof. That Hashem is invested in His wisdom and in His Teda. Which is now inside this particular person. So when you learn Teda, you're not only being held by the Eibishter, you're holding the Eibishter and you're metabolizing the Eibishter. You're digesting the Eibishter. Chas v'shalom, you're not breaking him down and destroying him. You're becoming Eibishterly. And this says in the Pasuk, Teda is in my intestines. It becomes one with the person. The garments of the neshamas and Gan Eden, mitzvahs of the mitzvahs. Teda is the food of the neshamas. Study Teda in this world, lishma for the sake of the Eibishter. You know the word that's brought. It's in Kisvei Arizal that Rabbi ben died. He was a Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara said he didn't miss a chance to do an Aved. Then he did tshuva, right? He put his head between his knees and he cried. Rabbi ben died. He came to Gan Eden. He needed mitzvahs. He had no mitzvahs. So they gave him the mitzvahs of Yechon and King Godel. That Shimish Peishman and not to the Kisvei Arizal. For example, a guy does so much tshuva that he dies from tshuva. Fishtor zeines nas like his achis. His Avedas become mitzvahs. His Avedas become mitzvahs. What does he need somebody else's mitzvahs for? And the teretz is that when you do Avedas becoming mitzvahs, you break down the Aveda. What's left from the Aveda is only the energy of the Aveda, but not the garment quality. And in Gan Eden you need garments. Why? Because if you sit in Gan Eden and you have no garments, there could be unbelievable lights and you don't get it. You need conductors, the carriers of the lights in Gan Eden are the mitzvahs. But the light is the kavanah of your mitzvahs and the Teda. That's the pnimis, that's the mosaic. So the mitzvahs that we perform in Gan Eden, we don't experience the godliness of the mitzvahs. Lost of love, we will experience the godliness of the mitzvahs. In Gan Eden, you don't experience the You don't experience the godliness of the mitzvahs. What the mitzvahs do is they allow you to experience the kavanah of the mitzvah and the Torah, because that's the pnimius, that's the mazan, so this Rebbe Elazar ben Dodaya needed mitzvahs. Otherwise, his Avedas became mitzvahs. But they became like the oil of a mitzvah, the kavanah of the mitzvah, not the garment quality of the mitzvah, because he destroyed the garment quality, because it's klipa. So Zdenis Nas like Zachis means the energy of the Zodin. But the Metziah said the Zodin is destroyed. So he needed to have mitzvahs. You understand? So what the Eitz Chaim says, that we don't experience the godliness of a mitzvah. We experience the godliness of the Teda and the godliness of the Kavanah as mitzvahs. The mitzvahs simply conduct the godliness. Now, what about the idea of experiencing the godliness of a mitzvah? This is already Perek Lamed Hey, Tanya chapter 35 and 36, Dira B'Tachteinim, and that's not in Gan Eden, this is Liyas Love. That it says in Zayir, in Vayakal Daf. Now, Ulashma Hain, the Alter Rebbe said that this idea that when you learn Teda Lishma, then in Gan Eden it feeds you. What does Lishma mean? To attach yourself to the Eibishter. The Asagas of Teda through intellectual reach and Teda. Each one according to his mind. Now, there's a Chiddush here. Okay? What does the meaning of the word Lishma mean? It depends. There's a lot of different types of lishma, right? A Mesnagit says lishma just for the sake of knowing the Teda, not for the sake of having panos from it, not for the sake of doing mitzvahs and so forth. Chassidus has a very, very deep lishma. The lishma of Chassidus is lishma l'shem ha-Teda. The Gemara says in Masechet Pesachim that Absheshes used to say, "Mikari kikari inish." When a person starts learning Teda, adaita de nafshei, he learns Teda for himself. Olu b'seif, he learns Teda l'shem ha-Teda, for the sake of Teda. So it's explained in Chassidus, based on the Sefer Aboya, Dovid, Yemakash Teda Shamayla, Makadosh Baruch Hu, Teda l'shma means you're doing Teda a favor by learning it. When a Yid learns Teda, you connect the Oira Teda to what's called Moed, the Yetzim, which is connected to Chanukah, but we won't go into it. Here the Rebbe says, I mean a lower lishma. I don't mean the Hasidish lishma that you're doing Teda lefavor. I mean takadaita denafshe. Lishma, the tight lishma over here is kasha nafshe l'Hashem, that the Teda should connect you to the Eibishter. The idea of Teda connecting you to the Eibishter is a much lower lishma than the lishma l'Shem HaTeda. You understand? It says Alter Rebbe over here, this is enough. If the doctor matitan le is a chitzeni is a makiv, is in keser. It's higher than Atzilus. But in Atzilus, we do touch the Eibishter. We do affect the Eibishter, but it's a different issue. But over here, in other words, normally Lishma, in other words, the real deep Lishma of Chassidus is he doing Teda a favor. It says over here you don't need that. What the Gemara calls the Daita de Nafshe, that's this Lishma. You're learning Teda for yourself, for your own soul. The Kasha Nafshe L'Hashem, to use the other form for this, that it says Tlas Kishin Miskashran Dabadad, there are three knots that are tied to one another, right? Yidna connected to Teda, connected to Eibishter. That's a lower Madrege. Our connection to Hashem is through the Teda. So that's this Lishma. L'Kasha Nafshe L'Hashem. There's a higher Kesher where a Yid is one with the Eibishter. Yisrael U'Malkul B'Chadei Yud with the Eibishter. He's connecting Teda to the Eibishter. Says the Alter Rebbe over here, you don't have to have the lower Lishma. Over here, the lower Lishma is enough. If you learn Teda and you want not just to be a scholar, but the Teda should connect you to the Eibishter, that's already sufficiently lishma that when you'll get to Gan Eden, you'll have the tainug of the hasag of Teda that you learned in this world, and the mitzvahs are going to conduct that light. You understand? You understood? In other words, over here, pshat lishma is less, not more. This idea that Teda is food, nourishment, is an inner light, a revealed light. V'alavushim and mitzvahs, which are garments, makifim is a surrounding light. That's why the Gemara says, or the Mishnah says, Talmud Teresh, mitzvahs, Talmud Teresh is equal to all the mitzvahs. Mitzvahs and levushim about mitzvahs are only garments. And Teda is light. And in addition to being light, it's v'gam levush and nefesh, it's also a garment to the soul, hamaskelis, which is creating the Teda, shemislabish, which is invested in it, b'yuna v'limudu, when he concentrates and learns Teda. V'koshken, and especially, kishameitzi b'piv, when you speak words of Teda, b'dibur, verbally, that when you're speaking words, you have for sure both qualities of you eating the Teda and you wearing the Teda like a garment. Shahav aladiba, the air, the words of your Teda, nasa b'china saying makav come as surrounding light. So what is the point? Alter Rebbe says, why is Teda equal to all the mitzvahs? Right? Now I don't know if you guys know this, but what does it normally say? It's ne'er mitzvah v'Teda eir. Mitzvah is a small candle. Teda is the whole thing. All 630 mitzvahs together create one eir, and that eir is Teda. So when you do a mitzvah, it's one limb. You study Teda, any part of the Teda is not one limb, it's the whole light. The light of all the Tayyag mitzvahs is in Teda. It's like Teda was compared to the light of the sun. A mitzvah compared to the lights of a candle. And that's why the Chazal say, Aveda mechab mitzvah and Aveda mechab Teda. Keit vare ke'esh, diva Teda mechab l'ntuma. A mitzvah can become contaminated because it's a small candle, small fire. Teda is the whole light. Here it is a different word. Why is Teda equal to all the mitzvahs? Not because Teda is the general light and mitzvah is the specific light. Because Teda is the light of each mitzvah. When you do mitzvahs, you create garments, right? What are you going to do with those garments? You're going to wear them in Gan Eden. What for? To show off that you're fashionable? So you could experience the light of the Teda that you performed. So every mitzvah has a Teda attached to it. You understand? And each time I do a mitzvah, I'm creating another conductor to the light of the Teda in Gan Eden. And therefore Teda is involved in every mitzvah. Every mitzvah has Teda. And in it, but Teda is also a levush. Teda itself is a mitzvah, especially if you speak. The words of Teda are for sure a garment. Even if you don't speak, the emes is Teda is a levush. But especially if you speak. So when you learn Teda and do mitzvahs, you create garments through the mitzvahs, and you create light to the Teda. Now understand that the light of mitzvahs is higher than the light of Teda. It's a makiv, and Teda is a pnimi. And we had the Gerz Lakedesh Siman Chavtes. Yeah, the 29th epistle, 29th letter, where the Alter Rebbe says, Lahavin, why halachas is called Kiser V'Taga Shel Teda. And he explained to us over there this idea that halachas are a garment for Er Makif, for a much, much higher light than Teda. But that's a different discussion. In other words, there are miles of mitzvahs over Teda, but that's not being discussed here. Here we're speaking the mile of Teda over mitzvahs. That the mile of Teda over mitzvahs is that mitzvahs are only a garment. You don't experience their light, even though it's an Er Makif, and Teda is Mozin. V'gam Lavush.